Naturally Noel Show, brought to you by Noel's Naturals, all natural products that really work. And now, please welcome entrepreneur, wife, homeschooling mom of 4, and founder of the Noel's Naturals brand of products, your host, Noel Talley.
Hi, welcome to the Naturally Noel Show. I'm your host, Noel Talley, and with me today is Allan Pereira. Do you like my...
Yeah, that was good. You got the R roll.
Pereira?
Yeah.
Allan Pereira. So Allan is the digital storyteller for a nonprofit organization that Noel's Naturals supports called Man Up and Go. So every one of your purchases, a portion of that goes to supporting Allan and the work that he's doing. So welcome to the show today.
And thank you for purchasing from Noel Naturals to support Man Up.
So tell us a little bit about Man Up and sort of what you guys are doing.
So Man Up is as Noel said, nonprofit organization that basically what we do is we try to live out James 1:27. So that's the Bible verse that just talks about caring for the orphans and the widows. But the way that we go about it is like super unique, and that's why I joined the organization. Is we saw all these, what my CEO will say, like bodies coming downstream, which is the children and the women being affected by something. Like, why are there orphans and why are there widows, or why are there foster kids? And it just ended up always being the men. Like, all these men leaving the home is causing this huge effect to where, like, a high percentage of incarcerations are due to fatherlessness. Like, most people in jail are fatherless. Sex trafficking, fatherless. Like, so it's so affected society. And so there's a ton of organizations that target children and women directly, and we do as well. But at Man Up, what we also have is an authentic masculinity program, which is kind of what sold me, is what we do is we have a 12-week program. This is internationally right now, and we're bringing it domestically. But a 12-week program where we cover what it means to be a man, as a worker, as husband, as community leader, as it goes on. And then we go into resourcing. How do we equip men to be the leader of the home, to be the leader in the community, to care for the vulnerable in their society? And so at Man Up, that's kind of what we're doing, is just across the board, child sponsorship, taking care of kids that need food, need schooling, education, and then women, helping them have money generating activities, and then with men equipping them to lead the home.
I love that so much. I have goosebumps, and I'm trying not to get misty-eyed because I'm just so passionate about what you guys are doing. I love it so much. So tell me a little bit about your background and why this meant so much to you to be involved in something like this.
Okay, well, I mean, but yeah. Basically, just growing up in a single mother home, it was both an immigrant home. So my mom came to the United States when she was 25, so 2 years younger than me right now. Nothing before her, no idea what's going on. She just came. She actually accidentally came, like, not knowing that she needed all these documents to stay. And then as she was here, she ended up getting her citizenship like a few years ago. But so she came and met my dad here. They had me and my sister out of wedlock, got married. But then, like, when I was 2, my dad just dipped, like, went to Brazil. Didn't meet him till I was 8. So my whole entire life, I was like asking my mom, who is this guy? Like, what was he like? Almost like he was dead. And so I had grown up my entire life, and still to this day, I barely know my dad. And so growing up in a single parent home, I never had a male figure that was consistent in my life and intimately involved with me to the point where, like, I had leadership,
Yeah.
So every time I enter a room, I feel behind. Every time I didn't even know why I had so much anger. I didn't know why in school I couldn't even understand, like, how to listen to the teachers. Because at home, like, my mom was working 3 jobs just to,
Wow.
So growing up fatherless, I think, made me just have this heart and passion for people that grow up like me, to serve them.
So you and I have talked about, one of the things I love about you is that you were just like a champion for women. Growing up in a female-led home and in the Latin community where women really do kind of take charge a lot. Tell me about, like, how that has affected you and just kind of how you view women and how you interact with women.
Yeah, I mean, it just, like, for me, I don't understand how people can't. Because for me, women always did everything. Like, I have an uncle that he did a lot, like, financially for my aunts and my mom. But at the same time, like, women are the reason that my uncle's business is still open, because my mom and my aunts are the ones that helped keep it open.
Yeah.
Like, till this day, he says that, you know. And my mom, like, so I grew up, when I was with my mom, we also lived with my aunt, because I think her husband had died before I was born, and then my dad had left. And then we lost our house, and we just all lived under one household. So I grew up with 2 women in the home, leading 3 boys and 1 girl.
Wow.
So my older cousins were led by, So, like, my cousins always say, like, my mom's a second mom to them, you know?
Yeah.
So I've always just been around women killing it, you know?
And it's so funny to me. This is something that's such a dichotomy to me, that, like, with these women around you just crushing it, you know, taking care of everything that you need. Your mom, you know, busting her butt, working 3 jobs to take care of you guys, and did so much for you and loved you, and you know your mom loves you and cares for you, and, you know. But even with all of that, just this little piece missing from your dad leaves such a gap. And that's, as a mom, it's kind of like, it feels a little unfair sometimes.
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
I do all this work, and then their dad comes in and he's like, hey, I got a lollipop, and they're like, forget mom. But it's funny. It's such a weird, like, dynamic between like women just kind of being the ones like running the show, but really just dads emotionally have such an important role, even though women are kind of like the ones on the ground
doing all the muddy stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's crazy is, like, so I was thinking about this yesterday. Women are so good at what they do, and so good at picking up the slack that other people leave behind, especially men, right?
Yeah.
But it's not fair to women to have to pick that up. So you can do even better what you do when a man is around.
Yeah.
Just because he can pick up his responsibility that he was designed to.
Oh, wow. That's really good. I like that.
Just like with any company, like, if you have somebody that's really good at accounting, but you lost an employee and they have to pick up that slack, they can't do their job as well.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think that that's what's happening is women have, for centuries, you know, having to pick up everywhere where men leave off.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not fair.
No, it's not fair. So what do you think, where's the gap there? Like, what is it that moms, like, you know, I've got 2 boys, like, as I'm raising my boys, and obviously, like, you know, they do have their dad around, thankfully, and he is a good example for them of how to treat women and how to be supportive. Like, he's such a supportive guy. Like, he's always, like, even with my business, he's always been like, how can I support you in doing what you want to do, which is just so awesome. But I know not everyone has that. So, and you grew up kind of without that model. So as you kind of didn't see that, what do you think are ways that your mom sort of like lifted you up that brought you to this place where now you do have a good understanding of what men can do and how they can support women?
I think it was the transparency. Like, how we grew up, there was no hiding what's going on. Like, I knew how much my mom made salary, hourly, and everything by the time I was 8.
Wow.
Like, I was asking questions. Like, what are bills? How much do you make? How much would we need to make to help?
Yeah.
And a lot of people try to, like, hide that from their kids to, like, protect them from what's going on. Like, you know. And I think me knowing, like, led me to be like, I appreciate what my mom's doing.
Yeah.
To where I never did drugs, never was in trouble with the law, and statistically I should have been.
Yeah.
And the type of kid I was, I definitely should. Like, ask anyone in my family, they're like, how you turned out this way, we thought you'd be dead.
Yeah.
You know? So I think the biggest thing was the transparency, where we knew what was going on, we knew what was missing, she was vocal about it, and then we respected her for that. You know?
Yeah. What's your mom's nationality? Yeah.
So she's Brazilian by nationality.
Yeah.
But she is genetically, like, Japanese.
Yeah.
Yeah, you saw her.
Yeah, because we did the 23andMe thing.
Yeah.
That was cool to get to see some of your stuff. So, like, do you think that that's, like, a cultural thing? Because I feel like Latin women, like, don't play. Like, they
don't. No games.
And it's seriously, like, white women are so different. White women are just... I think there's just a much different culture. There's, you know, I feel like a lot of my listeners are, you know, they like to do gentle parenting and attachment parenting and respectful parenting. And, you know, that's definitely a culture shift where there's just a much more sort of laid back way of parenting. And in a lot of ways, that's really good.
Mm-hmm.
That's really helpful because it really helps children to navigate through their emotions in a way that I know when I was a kid, that wasn't allowed. It was like you act right or you get in trouble. There wasn't really space for, wow, these are big emotions for little kids. So I think culturally there's a lot of stuff that's really good, but I think we're missing some things as far as like teaching kids how to act right. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
What do you think about that?
So like with my mom, I got it a lot, and that's just what it is.
Yeah.
You know, I'd speak to any Latin kid and they're gonna tell you.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like in the Latin culture, like mom is queen in the home. Even if dad is around, like mom runs the home. You respect her because she's the one.
Yeah.
But then again, it's hard for me to speak into like what it looks like to have dad.
Yeah.
You know, so mom was having to be the authority.
Right.
And the nurture.
Yeah.
And which she was really good at. Sometimes people can only play one role.
Right.
And she played both.
So let's kind of touch on things that your mom instilled in you that really helped you kind of prepare you for manhood and just affected you and how you've become today.
Yeah, so right before I came here, my mom called me. We talk every day. I call her or she calls me by 9 o'clock in the morning. And then before going to bed, we talk. And then throughout the day, we might talk as well.
I love that.
So at least 3 times a day. And my friends make fun of me for it too. They're like, you talk to your mom again? And I'm like, how do you not have this relationship with your mom? That's crazy to me. But so I'm talking to her and I'm letting her know what I'm doing today. And she said, what are you about to go to right now? And I said, I'm doing a podcast. I wasn't sure if she knew what that was. And then she asked me what it's about. And I said, well, I'm talking about, a bunch of stuff, but some of them I'm going to be talking about you. And she loved it, right? And so she let me know, like she has friends that they also know me and they've watched me grow up. And they tell me that I'm so much like her, which makes me so happy. Some people want to be like dad.
Yeah.
I always wanted to be like mom.
Yeah.
And the reason is because regardless of the fact that we were poor, like eating from pantries and stuff like that, she was always figuring out how she could help the homeless or another single mom or the elderly.
Oh,
and I saw that in the midst of poverty and mental health and whatever other stuff we had going on in our family, she still cared about other people.
Yeah.
It wasn't like this thing of like, when I get right, then I'll take care. Like I have to remind her, hey, you need money.
Right.
Like I feel you want to help all these people, but there's some boundaries, mom, know. But I also tell her I'm so glad to be her son.
Yeah.
Because I've seen her love people I've seen her love people and do things for people without the means. She'll just network. Like she'll make sure, hey, I know this guy that has a lot of money and he's getting rid of a couch. I know this lady that she just came in from Cuba. She has nothing. Connect.
Wow.
And that's what got me into Man Up. And that's what made me be somebody that like, I can't help but try to help people.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so cool. How do you think, like, did you grow up in church or, so what do you think drove your mom to be that way?
That's so hard for me is like, cause I think some of that's culture. I definitely think some of that's culture because that like Brazilians do care for each other. And I think it's just her coming from poverty, like real poverty. Like Brazilian poverty is a different story, know? And so her just knowing like, this is what I went through. I want to make sure whoever I'm around is okay. Yeah. And then as people helped us out, she was always big on, well, let me help somebody else. Yeah. Yeah. And like the biggest thing was the pantry there was a Catholic church that would give us food. And then people within the church at the Catholic church, before we became Christians, she would bring us like stuff, take care of us. And then she was always big on like, okay, now I'm going to give that to somebody else. Yeah.
I wonder, because I grew up very poor as well. And so did my husband. And there are so many things instilled in us from that experience, just hard work and appreciating what we have. And, as we're a little bit more affluent now, my children are being raised in that. And we still are trying to teach them about hard work and serving people. And we try to lead by example. But I wonder, like, which lessons are my kids going to miss out on because of that, And I don't know. What do you think?
I think about that all the time. Yeah. Because I think about, like, that's the goal, is to be where you guys are at. Yeah. Right? Like, you don't want to be like, so my kids learn these lessons, I'm going to stay poor. Right. Right? Right. And so I think that there's a healthy way that we're designed to, like, become that, but then still instill those same lessons that we learn. And I think what I saw in Miami is the most people that are immigrating their mindset was always, let me give my kids everything I didn't have.
Right.
And you don't want that.
Right.
Like, you want them to experience some of that. But I think there's this podcast that I listen to that one thing that they say all the time, exposure leads to expansion. And so exposing people, like exposing your kids, like I went to feed other families when I was a kid, and we went to this trailer park, and with my aunt we knocked on the door. We had all these teddy bears, and I'm like, I think 10 at the time. We open the door, it's a 13-year-old girl taking care of her 2 little brothers, and my aunt says, hey, where are your parents? She goes, we don't have parents, like it's me and my 2 brothers.
Wow.
13, and the system doesn't know about them because they're trying to like stay low key.
Yeah.
And it was just this constant reminder that my mom was like, I know we have it bad, but look, you know? And so I think exposure is the biggest thing, is exposing your kids to like what the world looks like, you know?
Does Man Up have opportunities for that?
Yeah, sadly, like internationally right now, because of the whole COVID thing, a lot of traveling has been difficult.
Yeah.
But we will be doing trips hopefully soon as stuff opens up. But then locally, we do a lot of stuff with foster families, and so people that are part of our program, or people that at least connect with us and go through background checks and stuff, are able to like feed foster families, or deliver diapers, or anything that will help a foster family, you know. And so that's probably the most exposure we can get right now, just because the foster children have to be protected.
Right.
You know?
Right, I understand that. Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like we really, you know, as a family, I think we've been sort of like around the edge, because with our church, thankfully, there's, well, there were a lot of opportunities to do outreach and things like that. But with COVID, it's kind of been difficult. So we've sort of stepped out of that. And I feel like we're in a season now where we do need to start, like, especially with our children getting older and able to understand more. I think that's so, so important. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think a lot of people probably need a reminder about that, because even different socioeconomic, you know, places on the tier in the United States, like, I think most of the people listening to this podcast, even, I mean, I'll just say it, people that can afford to buy Noel's Naturals products, you know, it's not as, you know, cheap as some of the store brand items, you know. So, I mean, I think we're going to have a mostly like middle class, you know, listening audience where, you know, even if we're not as, you know, affluent as some other people, like, we're still way better off than, you know, that 13-year-old girl and her 2 siblings in the, you know, in the trailer. So I feel like we're just outside of it. We just forget about it. We don't realize that it's happening. And we just, you know, out of sight, out of mind. And that's such a good point. I don't want my kids growing up, like, not having any idea how good they have it, and how much we talk to them a lot about how we give out of our abundance, and like, you know, we support you guys, and we support a number of different ministries in the area, and missionaries, and, you know, nonprofit organizations, and we tell the kids we have too much. We have more than we need, and we're just going to give it to people.
That's good.
And so even like when we give them, you know, money for different things that they help with around the house, we're like, okay, so what do you want to give to? And we'll talk about different ways that they can give of their money. And that's, I think we're really good at giving of our money. We're generous in that way. But as far as our time and actually like getting in the trenches and going and serving these people, I feel like I can really do so much better with that. And that's such a good reminder.
Yeah.
So, like, speaking to that woman, you know, who, you know, maybe, you know, this middle-class woman raising kids, like, how do you bridge that gap between, like, you know, here, let me give to this organization, and then also, like, how do we actually, like, show community with people who are less fortunate than we are?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, like, not getting so caught up in just the organizational aspect of, I need the structure in place where I just serve them and then I go home, or I go to the, you know, but really building relationships with people, because even as your kids are watching you model this, they're watching, like, are we just wealthy people that go and serve them and then leave, or do we actually genuinely have, like, a soul care and impact on this person?
Yeah.
And are we also learning from them, right? Because a lot of times, like my mom, so one of the homes that she cleaned when we were kids, and even has a good relationship with these multimillionaires that we know. These people, they own clinics around the entire state of Florida. They're very, very affluent. And his wife listens to my mom. Like, there's a genuine relationship there.
Yeah.
And their kids see that, you know?
Yeah.
And so sometimes what we can do is we can become, like, some people would say, like, white savior or just savior mentality, where, like, we can model to our kids. I don't have kids, but, like, we can model to children, like, hey, this is what that is. You just go and you just a one-off, check the mark, check the box, and we're good.
Yeah.
Versus, like, no, I genuinely have a friendship with this person, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I've never heard that term before.
What?
The white savior.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's a lot of times what people do for, like, missionaries or people that are adopting.
Right.
Which I'm against just saying that, because I believe that we all can have that.
Right.
You know, we all can have that thing where, like, I'm God, I'm your savior.
Right.
But it's just a phrase that some people use.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel like that's important. And, it's something too, like, we do talk to our children about culture and about how we are white and, like, what that means in our culture, and that doesn't make us bad. That doesn't make us, there's not something wrong with us because we were born into privilege. But we were born into privilege, and there are things, like, we do discuss that with them, that because of that, out of that privilege, like, we do have a generous heart, and we do give, and we never think we're better than people. And just even with all of this, racial stuff that's been going on over the last year, like, having to discuss that and explain that to, my little children who, they don't understand that world at all, and having to explain to them, did you know, like, that people used to, own people as slaves, and they're so innocent, and they're like, what? Yeah. They're just baffled by that. Like, why would anyone ever think that they could own another person? And we're like, right, exactly what you're thinking. Like, that innocence is so beautiful. They don't have that hatred in their heart. They don't have those feelings of prejudice, and I love that so much. So we're trying to teach them young, like, we're not better than anybody. Like, we're all equal in the eyes of the Lord. And so I love, like, those just innocent conversations where we can kind of discuss, like, yes, there are people that are in different places than we are, and come from different backgrounds than we are, but how do we, reach out? But I love what you're saying, is that white savior mentality. I've never even thought of that. Like, oh yeah, here we are. Look, we're going to bring you this food, and oh, we feel so good about ourselves that we did our little deed, and now we're going to go back to our, suburban neighborhood. So, like, how do you break that mentality? That, you didn't grow up with that mentality,
I was affected by it. So I grew up, I'll be honest, like, I'll be really candid to publicly say that, but, like, I grew up racist towards white people.
Wow.
Because I just, all these things of, like, white people are rich and we aren't, all that stuff. And until I met people that genuinely cared. Yeah. Like, it wasn't just like, here's your, like, here, poor person, here's your crumbs, you know? Yeah. But it was more like, we had people that, there was one guy, like, I have this idea that I want to do soon with Man Up, which is, like, called Share a Dad. And where, like, people share their fathers with fatherless kids in the church when we do a father-son event. Like, where is this event? Like, it's an exclusive event that leaves out the fatherless kid or the motherless girl, Yeah. And instead saying, like, hey, I care about that kid. So there was a couple that they're both white, wealthy, and their kids were grown. And the man, he knew my mom, and he said, hey, let me take Allan to that father-son event. That blew my mind. Wow. I was allowed into this event that I was exclusively excluded from. Yeah. And I was like, wow, this is so fun. Like, this is so cool. Like, I have no relationship with this guy, and he's just like, let me take my time to just invest in you for a second. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing that breaks that, is just saying, am I willing to get messy with people? Yeah. Or is it just more like, here, I'm going to put my gloves on, put my mask on, here's your stuff, but just don't touch my life. Right. Like, don't touch my lifestyle. Don't touch, Yes. And I think that's a lot of times what that mentality is like, I want all my comfort, but I want to feel good about helping you. Yes. Versus, like, let's get uncomfortable. Right.
So we've talked a lot about introversion and extroversion, because your wife is an introvert, and you and my husband are both extroverts, and I'm an introvert. So we've talked about those dynamics, and one of the things that's really, really hard for me as an introvert is getting in relationship with people I don't know. Like, that's so hard for me. And even, like, my heart's just being, like, tugged at right now as we're talking. Like, for me, like, comfort, I'm fine. Like, I'm fine sacrificing that. Like, I grew up poor. Like, I didn't grow up with much. Like, that, I can take that or leave that. But for me, like, my comfort idol is, like...
alone time.
And also just, like, talking to people. And, like, I just, you know, I have my few close friends that are my people. And outside of that, I'm like, you're not my people. Yeah. So that's, like... that's a huge sacrifice for me. For sure. Like, I can, you know, give resources. Like, to me, like, that's not hard for me to do. But to give of, like, my time and of myself, like, that's a huge sacrifice. And even as we're sitting here, I'm like, ooh, maybe I need to, like, break that in myself. And even though that's not comfortable for me, that's awkward for me, like, maybe I need to push myself in that way.
I think that, like, even as an introvert, for you... it's not necessarily always having to meet new people in a different demographic, right? Yeah. But maybe some of your close friends being those people as you meet them. Yeah. Like, and that's just, that'll be your people. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But it's I think that's the big thing is, like, because you don't have all the time in the world. Right. You're a mother, a wife, you know, run a business owner. Like, you have so much stuff going on. Yeah. Meeting new people all the time just isn't feasible necessarily. Right. But in your group, it's like a big thing for me is, like, I was so happy to look at all of the people at our wedding and be like, this is probably, I've seen wedding pictures and videos. Yeah. They're not diverse. Yeah. Like, typically it's everybody's black, everybody's white, or everybody, like, you know? Yeah. And I looked around and I was like, man, this looks different.
You
like,
had
this shows.
Such a cool wedding. It was so diverse. Like, I thought the same thing. I looked around. There were different ages and, you know, just people from so many different cultures. And that speaks so much to who you and Alexis are as a couple and the culture that you guys have created to just be so inclusive. And I love how, you know, we've had such open conversations with you guys about race and about, you know, the differences in our community. And I didn't know that about you, that you used to feel like racist towards white people. I would have never known that. Yeah. And for us to be able to talk about that and bridge that gap and understand each other, and you know, that you invited us to your wedding, you know, that we were able to be, you know, part of such an important part of your life, you know, that just shows, like, you know, what God has done in your life and your heart.
I think that was the biggest thing for me. Like, I loved, obviously our wedding was all about glorifying God through our, you know, union and everything. But when we looked at pictures and stuff, I was like, yo, this is fire. Like, the fact that, like, I'm able to look at this and be like, yup. Yeah. You know, like, everything I preach, I was like, this is showing, you know, and I think that that's the big thing. So even with an introvert, there's that thing of, like, within that small group, when you look around, are they all in the same lifestyle as you? Yeah. You know, is that, like, all your golf buddies or all your CEO friends? Yeah. And is that it? Or is there people that's a janitor at Calvary Church or wherever, you know? Yeah. And so, for a lot of people, that's not the case. Right. You know, when they look around, everybody's pretty much just like them.
Yeah. So how do you think you go about, like, diversifying your community? Like, because that's weird, you know, like, to be intentional about that is kind of weird. Like, oh, let me go find, you know, this person who's not like me to be friends with. Like, how do you do that more organically?
I think it genuinely is that whole, like, expansion leads to exposure leads to expansion. Like, the more you build a relationship with somebody that's in a different economic status than you, like, that changes your kids' lives, that changes your mindset and life.
We've talked about that too, like, with our kids. Like, I don't want our kids growing up only being around people that are just like us. Like, I want them to see, you know, a diverse world. And and it's hard because, like, of the neighborhood that you live in, like, tends to be people like you, like, where they go for, you know, soccer and where they go for karate. And, you know, it tends to be people that are the same as you. So you really have to be super intentional to break out of that. And, you know, we've even talked about, like, within the church, like, how do we diversify church and how do we, but there are some cultural barriers there, you know? I mean, like, black people don't worship the way I worship. I wish I could worship the way that black people worship. Like, I want to go to a black church and, like, just, you know,
go all out.
I love that culture so much, but that would probably be awkward for me to walk in and be like, hi, I'm here. Like, I want to be like you, it's hard to break that barrier, without being weird.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is like, obviously there's certain things like the type of karate you go to or soccer you go to, but I feel like there are sports where, like with basketball, soccer, that they're not necessarily like fencing. Yeah, you're probably just gonna run into, you're probably gonna run into the same people.
My kids don't do fencing.
But you know what I mean? Like soccer is a different story. That's typically like poor kids, like basketball, picking up a basketball, football, or soccer ball is typically you'll have different economic, you know. So I think that the biggest thing is just like walking with people through that, and like I know a family that they used to pay for their son's best friend to go to travel with him because they played together in soccer, but he was poor. Aww. So he couldn't afford to join the travel team because that's like, I don't know how much money a year, but they paid for that.
Wow.
So that he can get the opportunity.
I love that.
So then this kid is watching his parents take care of his friend, but also sees his friend, and his lifestyle.
Yeah.
So
I think too, that's one of the things, I've heard parents who send their kids to public school versus parents who homeschool, and parents talking about how in public school it's such a missional opportunity, and that's something that we don't get as we homeschool. We have to probably find different ways to do that. But I've heard parents like, there's kids in their class that don't have anything, and they're able to step into that and like help those kids out, and I love that so much. That's something that it's one of the downsides of homeschooling. There aren't a whole lot, I feel like, but we really have to kind of look at that and see like, okay, like our kids aren't in that community at school, so how can we get them into community with kids?
Like foster those relationships another way.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing, is like how parents get involved with their kids' friendships and kids' families affects the kids so much.
Yes.
And I think that's what I saw growing up, you know, when I played football 1 year, I got knocked out, so I was just like, I'm playing basketball. But I would see parents and even my coach, like, he would give me $100 because he knew we didn't have anything. Yeah. And he'd be like, hey, here you go. Like, here's, and it was just that, like, just being that intentional. And a lot of people get so stuck in their own world that they forget that other people are, like, barely paying rent.
Right. Right, yeah.
So, yeah. I think that's like the biggest thing. It's just being intentional about the people around you, and it's always from leadership down. Yeah. Like what you see your leaders do, what you see your parents do, you typically mimic. Yes. So if your leadership's not doing that, or your parents aren't doing that, you're either a different breed of person that's going to figure that out on your own, right? Or you're just going to model after what you see.
Yeah. Man, I feel so challenged right now. I feel like I need to like go back to the drawing board and just like really like sit down, and we need to like discuss like how we're gonna change so many things.
But you guys do such a good job about still like being so intentional with your community. Even Adam, like with where he works and the community he works in, like he's helping people. Yes. Like that, like potentially without him would be completely screwed by the system. Yeah. Yeah. And just how you are, just like you guys don't look at people and say like, oh, we don't want to invite those type of people over our house. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like it's you guys are intentional. It's just that there's little things that come up that you're like, oh, we could do even this even better. Yeah. So it's not necessarily that you guys are doing anything wrong. Yeah. But that there's just extra stuff.
Yeah. I think it's so funny. That's probably why, we are business owners too. Like we're always like, this is good, but like, how can we make this better? How can we do more? How can we change this? Like, we're never like, that's just both of us. We're just
stuck in your ways. You're never stuck in your ways.
Always wanting to grow. We're always wanting to just like do better and do more and learn more. And, we're both, that's something that we both have very much in common. We're both like, I want to be challenged. I don't want to stay the same. I don't want to keep being ignorant to things. And we both are also really like honest about saying like, I was completely ignorant about that and I was wrong. Like, how do I change? Where do I go from here? I think that's a struggle for a lot of people to say like, especially like with the race thing to like, I think people like, especially white people are embarrassed to say like,
I don't know.
Oh, like, I don't know. Like I had a girl in one of my childbirth classes, and I was telling her, I was like, hey, I want to do a educational video, but I want like an African American mom because I just want to have it to be multicultural. And she was like, yeah, so we don't like being called African American. You can just call us Black. And I'm like, oh my God, like,
yeah.
like I thought I wasn't supposed to call you Black. Like I didn't know what I was supposed to say. And like, but I feel like that honesty and that like vulnerability of saying like, I don't know, like tell me what I should be doing. Like tell me what I should be saying and I will do that. Like I don't want to be like ignorant to, you know, to somebody who's different from me. And so I try to be that way. I think maybe sometimes people are uncomfortable with that level of honesty, but I want to start normalizing that. I want to start normalizing that conversation and say it's okay to like talk about our differences. It's okay to be like, yep, I'm white and there are things I don't know because of that. Like enlighten me. I want to know. Yeah.
Versus trying to have to like be right already.
Yes. Yeah. Why would I know these things? Of course I don't know these things. Like tell me, like show me your world, explain this to me so I can, you know, be better and be challenged.
And that's everybody's responsibility across the board, you know? Like obviously some people, like if you're a minority, you already have to learn the majority's culture depending on where you live. If it's Asia, you have to learn that because that's where you live.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like it's the majority's responsibility, especially if they're Christians, to say like, hey, how do I love you well?
Yeah.
Like how do I treat you the way that you receive love?
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely.
And so I think that's the biggest thing is like intentionality on understanding how that person needs to be treated or that they, you know?
Yeah.
So I appreciate like that you and Adam are always thinking about that.
Yeah.
You know, you guys are always like, regardless of what your opinions are, you still want to learn more about somebody else's, you know?
Yeah, that's by the grace of God.
For sure.
100%.
That's all of us though.
I know.
You know, because I was ignorant about white people.
Yeah.
And then as I got to learn and meet more, I was like, man, it's such an ignorant thing for me to be like, everybody's like this because of these few people I met.
Absolutely.
You know, across the board.
Yeah.
You know, the same way I wouldn't want a white person or a white cop to be like, all of you Latinos are the same.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that about them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Man, this is good stuff. Wow. Okay. All right. Well, I'm so glad that you came today. Like,
me too.
I feel like we could sit and talk for like 2 more hours.
Like do like a 3-hour podcast.
I know. I'm gonna have you back for sure. And I need to have Alexis come because she is your better half. Like,
she is.
All right. Thank you so much for listening to the Naturally Noelle Show, and we will see you soon. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Naturally Noelle Show, empowering you to live a more natural life, one step at a time.